Well, welcome, and thanks for spending some time with us. We are R&D, the Research and Development Workgroup for the Real Estate Standards Organization. I want to just take a minute for a big shout out to the RESO staff. I think 3 weeks ago, they ran the International MLS Forum, and here they are putting on another great event in Louisville, Kentucky. And I mean, what a cool place to get to come. I guess we can just move on with who's who. I'm Greg Moore. Basically, my day job, I'm the CTO at RMLS. I think John and I have been doing this gig for about 7 to 10 years together, and I still very much enjoy this.
And, oh, there I am.
There's our guy.
John Breault, statewide MLS in Rhode Island. I gotta look, it's quite possible I'm wearing the same outfit, I think, but I serve with Greg and also as vice chair on the RESO board, so thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So let's get down to business. As a work group, we want to run through antitrust. So RESO strives to increase competition in the marketplace and will not be a forum for anti-competitive conduct. The RESO antitrust policy governs the activities of RESO and its members, including this meeting. A link to the policy was emailed to you with the meeting agenda. Please consult RESO's counsel if you have any questions about the policy. Onward we go.
And this is a work group meeting, so it's not just, I mean, we have a little presentation, but this is going to be hopefully interactive.
Questions, comments, anything, we're certainly willing to hear this. So roughly, I mean, I'm not going to read this thing. If you've been here, you know, we've all done this many, many times. But really, we're here to listen to problems, to generate business cases for solutions, and really work through the process. As you know, there's a data dictionary group, there's an interop group, there's many other work groups. So what we do is kind of do some of the legwork to really, you know, vet those issues and then make sure that they find the right place and kind of walk them right on through the process. And quickly, as you can see, and they always talk about us kind of as the top of the funnel. You did see Broker Advisory, and they're a great group because they really bring us, you know, business problems for the folks that are out there managing real estate offices, et cetera. So today, on today's agenda, we actually have an issue that they did bring to us, and I mean, I think it'll resonate with many of you just across the country. So as you can see, it just, you know, things work through the process. It's not as smooth or as fast as many things go, but I mean, if you look at the progress we've made, say, over the last 10 years, we've gone really from zero to platinum. And that's really something that I think we're all proud of. Many of us were in those funny small rooms many years ago, eating pizza and having beer and working through standards. So really a cool business case, and I think more and more as the last even couple months and few conferences have come along, was something that Belden brought forward. And the premise here is, you know, how do I want to say this? AI. I mean, it's a buzzword everywhere, right?
That's one way to say it. Yeah, AI.
Yeah, I mean, let's just call it what it is.
Good job.
And really, you know, is it appropriate for the standard to have some flags? If an owner or a broker really doesn't want to have, you know, that content kind of thrown out in the world to help, you know, all the vendors, you know, who are vacuuming up data as fast as you possibly can on the internet, you know, can the MLS, can the Real Estate Standards Organization kind of put some guardrails around that?
Or, I mean, I guess it maybe said another way, right? So what if an MLS wants to build guardrails and, you know, give broker choice, right? The broker decides, I mean, we always talk about broker choice in terms of syndication and those things, but broker choice in that what products they want their listings to be exposed to in terms of AI. So if an MLS puts those guardrails in, how does that information then get communicated to data vendors, right? What fields would you need to pass along with the data to let them know permitted use?
Right.
And so when we looked at that, I mean, you start peeling away the layers of the onion, right? There's really a lot to think about, right? And so we maybe have more questions right now than we have answers, but the first is like, what's AI? Well, like, what do we mean when we say AI? Because there's so many different
Layers.
or layers of how it can be used or integrated, and more products are integrating some elements of it, right? So what do we mean when we say that? Are we talking about internal use, like the MLS's own use? I mean, we're using my MLS, we use some AI for compliance, and certainly we don't want brokers to opt out of MLS use of AI, right, for policing data, because, oh yeah, I'll opt out of the compliance, don't check my stuff for compliance. So are we meaning internal or external? Probably external, but these are things we need to sort of think about. Is it opted out and for the life of the listing? I guess, is it a flag they can turn on and off, right? Is it related to certain statuses? I'm sorry, I'm dominating this. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, if you really think about public-private images, right? Once, the marketing is done and the successful sale happens, the MLS wants to keep that data. You want all 30, 40, 50 pictures for that comp base. But often, the new buyers or even the sellers have privacy concerns about, showing the interior of the house, the layout of the land, all those kinds of stuff. So, I mean, a couple of years ago, RESO put together the flag that says, now, image 2 through image 99 are private. They stay in the MLS, but they're not to be shown any longer through the portals, et cetera. And I think, that's probably the best model we had as we started kind of kicking around this business case. Like you say, there's privacy laws. MLS's whole copyright to this content, et cetera. So, I mean, there's a lot of layers to this, and I think there's a lot more legwork that we need to do to really figure this thing out. Because, I mean, how do you police this? What do you do? Because once it's ingested, like the internet, it never forgets. So the stupid stuff I did 20 years ago is still online out there, let's be honest. And, you hope your children don't run into it sometime. But that's really, so this idea of allow AI learning, right? I mean, can you use that content, pictures or whatever, to teach, right? And I mean, computer vision is really a cool thing to create content for, say, a listing input product. Because it can check the dishwasher in the kitchen and tell you that there's a fireplace and, a ceiling fan in the family room. Those kinds of things I really think are parts of convenience. But, it knows that already. You don't have to give away your pictures anymore for those kinds of things. But, I mean, as we know, watching, on an every other week basis, AI is making leaps and bounds. Think of, the things that BPP are doing with voice search. And talk about, convenience and coolness. Now I can pull up in front of a house and just say, tell me about 123 Main Street, and it's going to read you the information. Or, the cool thing, I want, 10 acres in wine country that may have a barn or some kind of horse facility. And it knows how to unwind and wind that and relate it back to the listing content that they're holding for us. So, I mean, the use cases are really vast. And here I think we just really want to continue this conversation. I'm guessing it's going to be a multi-month conversation. We're not going to figure this thing out here, but we really wanted to plant some seeds and invite you guys to come and join our R&D calls so we can kind of learn together and figure this out. And I've got 3 really nice gentlemen sitting back there from VPP that I'm hoping are going to join us on one of those calls and educate us a bit. And then we can do a better job of really building those guardrails around the data where appropriate. And also make sure that these cool products and innovation continue to move along. All within kind of the MLS framework. Make sense?
So before we move on to the next topic.
Anybody doing
it? We're at a work group, so any thoughts, any comments? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. That's sort of the first point with like the what is AI? Like, what are we even talking about, right?
Did you guys hear that? I mean, like you say, computer vision now is something that's been around 10, 15 years. It's a vase, it's not a vase, it's a this, it's not a that. Fairly simple, just logic, and you can, somebody spent time teaching it that. Where now you've got different models, right? And, where does the, delivery and some of that processing kind of stop? And now you're allowing learning based on your data or your compilation and those kinds of things. So we'd really enjoy having you at one of the meetings because I think we can peel this onion a little bit more. Hopefully no tears, but I mean, there's just so much to it, but there's so much potential, and there's that little bit of creepiness for some of us.
That's usually my role in the R&D. I'm the little bit of creepiness.
Yeah.
Right?
There's, happiness and creepiness always up here when you put us two together.
Oh, you son of a gun.
The other question is, anybody talking about this at your MLS level?
So yeah, we know we had one who submitted this, but are any other MLSs looking at this kind of thing right now? Fields?
No. I mean, does it resonate? It kind of did with me, and I mean, you think that I should know some of this stuff, but I mean, when this one came in, it was like, duh, great idea. Now, how do we really figure it out? And how do we make sure we don't stifle innovation, but we certainly protect the compilation and the listing agent, the seller, the buyer, et cetera, when that transaction's done? All right. Well, next meeting, I'm assuming we're going to skip next week's meeting, week after, and move into November. I believe it's in our slide deck. We'll get to
is it?
dates
Oh,
and
all right, perfect, good.
Yeah. So the next one we got really was from the broker advisory group. And this one really talked about environmental hazards. And I think it started out of Colorado with like a wildfire zone. And when I was talking to them, gosh, I live in Oregon. We've got tsunami zones. We've got, volcanoes. There's flooding on the coast. Most earthquakes, you name it. But, in some ways, the question really is, would it be helpful to have data dictionary fields or maybe even open enumerations to indicate environmental hazards for the individual property, right? And like we were learning, there are some standards, but they seem more state-specific. Colorado has, their wildfire, abatement zone. My sister lives in the Sierras, and they have certain zones, et cetera. But I mean, when it comes down to it, if you can't get home insurance, you can't get a mortgage. And it really can affect the sale of the property. So, I mean, we figured, we're probably better off at least talking about this and seeing if it is appropriate to put in a field. It's certainly up to the MLS to implement that field, but to define it and make it available and do it the standard way if you're going to do it. And if there is an issue, at least, the selling agent would know that, we're in a high risk area, and, there may be, think flood zones have been around for a long time, and they've always had some kind of special insurance issues. Well, as, the weather gets worse, you name it, it really would be very helpful. So the idea is to consider possibly two fields. One is hazards affecting the property. So as you say, that's like I'm in a flood zone, I'm in a tsunami zone, I'm in a high fire danger zone, those kinds of things. And the other kind of tucking underneath, and I think often disclosures handle some of these, is hazards on the property. Was there mold on the property? Was there a flood that affected the house, and how was that mitigated? Those kinds of things are also fields that would be, possible to consider. The idea is probably to split those so we don't confuse kind of environmentally around the area to something that may have happened to the property itself or is affecting the property itself. I mean, landslides, if your backyard's slowly crumbling away or you're living downslope from something that could be a hazard, those kinds of things need to be figured out.
Your next slide, I think, has your sort of, you lifted this definition.
Yeah,
right,
so I mean, basically, thank you for AI, so I mean, here I am, But I just asked it, and here we are that, environmental risks in real estate refer to hazards on or near the property. So we say it was really, they kind of split the baby here, and that's what kind of got things, when John and I started talking about it, its value, its safety, its marketability, soil contamination. It may be something where you're living in an area where there was something, or that particular property had some kind of a problem. Where we live, it's often that a listing agent will want a radon test as they're listing that property. So if there has to be mitigation, they're not waiting for the inspection to come in, a month before the closing to figure out you've got to do some serious work or venting on this house. On and on and on, right? And the risk is critical for buyers and sellers, right? The investor to understand the potential costs, health concerns, legal liabilities, and that's the one that really I should have highlighted, right? And the property's future viability. Because this is what I think affects that, buyer's agent and seller's agent, where they need to get together and be educated. I mean, I think the good news is John and I kind of work through these with the R&D group. Then we hand it off to our friends in Data Dictionary, and they get to figure out probably more of the mechanics. Personally, I don't think where I work we'd want this as an IDX field going out to the world, but we'd want it certainly to keep our agents in front of anything that's coming their way. So for fun and games, and a little bit of brain scratching, we put together this list, and it's more of a idea or a sample when you talk about affecting the property. You've got wildfires and floods and all the kinds of things, tsunamis. We actually on our coast have tsunami drills where people, sign up and you drive up the hill and those kinds of things. And I'm sure there are many more. So I say when we put together this list on the property, and as you can see at the bottom, have those things been mitigated? If you're buying a house that was flooded, you want to make sure all that mold and all the mess that could happen, as that house moves along in its life has been cleaned up and well mitigated.
So, we're a standards body, right? So we're not creating fields within your MLS or whatever. We're building, this additions to the data dictionary to help you pass your data along. So, and I know as an MLS, and a lot of the feedback we sort of hear is like, well, why, no broker's going to want to answer this stuff anyway, right? I mean, they have the disclosure forms in most states where they're legally required, and they'll leave it to that. But so the question though really is, are any of your MLSs carrying data like this already? And then if so, do these options make sense? Is this a good way to go in terms of mapping something to the data dictionary? Do any of you folks have this kind of stuff in your, no?
Because I know in Colorado, this came out of there from Broker Advisory, but they're having some kind of state mandate that, really they want, the fire danger, the wildfire danger, and, they're actually defining wildfire zones and those kinds of things. And it seems possibly legislatively they're going to ask that it be added to a multiple listing service.
Go ahead, sorry. Yeah. Am I going to force disclosure on these? Right. Right. There are certain things that they have to disclose and not. It doesn't necessarily help the transaction go through, right? Yeah. In front of it. Commercial, absolutely love it. Residential side, I don't know if it's in the best interest. Yeah. It's for the consumer's best interest, but not necessarily. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of liability, and that's why a lot of times, like I said, they leave it to the state authorized forms to disclose, this kind of stuff. So, and so you typically don't see it in the MLS. But this is why we do our R&D, right? To see if there are people that are carrying this data, and then if it makes sense to move this then on to data dictionary or not. It may just be that, there's no need, so.
Yeah, I mean, in Oregon, they actually created a map, and I don't know, it wasn't many months later they took it down because it was affecting, the consumers. But I mean, you go out to Realtor Commons, some of those places, they do now have an environmental risk layer. So I mean, obviously the consumer can be informed. I mean, personally, sometimes you think you want the agent in front of that, right? So at least they have some knowledge. But yeah, this is one of those, kind of like AI, right? It's kind of that two-sided discussion. I mean, what the cost-benefit analysis, right? And I mean, you may cost yourself a sale by having some kind of disclosure on there. On the flip side, you may lose a deal because they can't get insurance, or the insurance rates are so ridiculous that they really can't afford now to own that home, right? So, I mean, that's why I say, I mean, we're here just to kick the tires, right? And really have these great discussions and learn from people who are, at a MLS meeting or, talking to brokers, or your state's knocking on your door saying, we're really thinking seriously about this. And, if we legislate it, it's going to affect the real estate community.
But can we use microphones for the people on the live stream, please?
Oh, thanks.
Thanks, Sam.
And repeat the questions, please.
Yeah, I mean, these questions and comments are really helpful. I mean, certainly to us, this is how we roll with R&D. We get the ideas, we try and define them a bit, and then we put them out to the working group. And the other good thing is, I mean, we do have analytics on data dictionary and stuff. So, I mean, is somebody have a field that's similar to this kind of field, in one of their systems? Yeah.
A lot of the disclosure that came out of commercial real estate was due to Superfund sites initially, and that kind of expanded into these full phase ones that eventually occur. What we would notice on that side is that even things like a mercury thermometer that was broken 50 years ago didn't even have a way to be cleaned out of the database. So when a phase one occurred, it would actually cause problems on the commercial side that there was a thermometer 50 years ago broken. Yeah. So I love seeing the mitigated yes/no flag on here, because at least we have a way to show that their mitigation has occurred.
Right.
So yeah, really interesting. The different perspectives on this, there's a ton. Legislation, I hope one day does come to the residential side that will help agents inform consumers and be on behalf of the consumer. When legislation leads in that way, I think it would be a great time for MLSs to add it. But they, just like the commercial side where legislation did lead the way, I hope one day it does, because consumers should be informed. But unfortunately, that's just not what occurs today, because it doesn't help deals go through.
Yeah, and I say it's coming, because I mean, Colorado, it looks like they're really going to legislate this.
Yeah. Which is amazing. It's
yeah,
great.
Well, I mean, obviously, if you're living in the mountains, you want to at least know what that risk is, and how that's going to affect the purchase of the house, and the cost of the real cost of ownership, right? Yeah. And I mean, unfortunately, we're watching flooding going on across the country. And I mean, houses getting 3 and 4 feet of water in there. And I mean, you should know, I mean, they always teach you about buying, used cars that come from somewhere to make sure that, they may move them to California, but they were underwater somewhere else. And I mean, there's ways to tell, but, you think disclosure at some point, especially in the real estate market, because, I came first out of the California market before I went to Oregon. And I mean, selling a house there is like a 4-page disclosure form with check boxes and all those kinds of things going on.
Great. Thank you. So we'll continue this discussion at R&D along with the A&I. That's last night's bourbon talking, AI discussion. And as we'll give you the date coming up, but we encourage you, if you're interested in any of these topics, to attend an upcoming work group meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's really, this is what we're here for, at R&D, is really just to take these ideas, basically try and define them, put some kind of concept around them, and then get together and have a discussion and see where they resonate or if they make sense. I know when I did talk to Data Dictionary, they hadn't seen either of these fields, and I was a little surprised that somebody hadn't already started on the AI, kind of at least some kind of privacy flags or something like that first. And then, as I say, coming, from Oregon, California, across the country right now with fires, floods, et cetera, hurricanes, damage, what happened to the property, what are the risks on that property, and, what could affect actually a successful deal or what could derail a deal for an agent as they move along. So, I mean, as we say, we always like to think that we want those agents, up front of the deal. It doesn't have to be a public thing, but just between themselves in the multiple listing service, sometimes sharing data and being educated and informed is really very helpful.
All right.
All right. So really the next thing on our agenda really is just open discussion. I mean, I know we had a pain point session, but I mean, what are things you guys are working on where, would it be helpful to have a data standard? I was just in, before I got here, the round table for data shares. And I mean, it was really cool to hear that they lean into the data dictionary when, 3 or 4 MLSs get together to exchange data and really solve maybe some of those weird overlaps or clashes that they have. And I mean, at least that particular cooperative really decided, well, when we get there, we'll first look at the data dictionary and then we'll kind of realign ourselves into the RESO way if it's there, or somehow put together a cooperative and solve that problem. So I mean, the more the data dictionary can be the leader for some of these things. I think if you were in here, Jason was showing some overlap reports. Where do we, with your neighbors, if you want to merge, if you want to share data, where are those friction points? How much do you, really agree data-wise? You think, we're in the Pacific Northwest. You think most of the fields that we hold, most of the other list, MLSs would too. Views, et cetera. So, anything come to mind? Or we're going to have the shortest R&D meeting in my whole life. Which means John and I get to have a beer sooner, but that's okay. You're not going to hurt our feelings. Thoughts? Comments?
Don't forget this.
Oh, I won't forget that.
I know.
Thank you.
So yeah, if there, there you go. Perfect. Thank you.
Not a pain point necessarily, but any thoughts about having a source field for each of the data dictionary fields we have? We talk about AI and field, God knows where fields comes from today, right? So.
Cool.
A source field, is that?
A source field?
Oh, I think actually, yeah, I think transport you're working on that,
Yeah,
right?
we're working on that right now.
Yeah, right.
About getting it added to all the resources
Yep.
so that we make sure that people who need to use that, we're also trying to convince the vendors themselves to use the originating, or now I've got it, OUI.
OUID.
Yeah, the OUID for the originating
OUI,
system so that we have consistency across the different platforms. We need to do a little bit of detailed work around what's actually getting into the source, because that's usually the vendor's system and not the organization system. So, someone like Cotality has Matrix and Trestle, and they would probably want to put that in that field, but we'd like to standardize that as well. And so we'll feed it back into the data dictionary group when we've done the work on it.
Yeah, what fields do we have now? We have like an originating
System ID, originating system name, source system ID, source system name. So there's 4 fields.
But they're two, originating and source basically are the
Yes,
two,
yeah,
right?
2 pairs. We've talked about potentially doing a provenance set, which would say it started here, so it could even be starting at the broker if they had a back-end system with data entry, goes to the MLS, goes to a vendor, goes to a data share, and then those people who are getting 5 or 6 feeds can know, I just really need to pay attention to this one because that same record's coming out in my data share and is causing some, inconsistencies in our data sets because the data share is 2 hours behind or whatever.
Yeah.
And so we're getting the same record twice, but now I know how to dedupe it. So
And this
we
is a
are
pretty-
working on it.
This is a pretty active discussion right now at Transport, right? So, thank you.
Yes. So I meant something slightly different.
Oh.
So on ad edit today, there's a lot of auto pop, right?
Right.
So now we're seeing that 80% of a listing is being auto popped.
Yeah.
What's the source of all these fields?
data
being filled?
point
The data,
source.
what are the sources?
Wow.
Is
Yeah,
it
that's
AI
interesting.
generated? Is it pulled from public records?
Yeah.
Where is it pulled from?
Yeah, so like right now, there are some you see where like there's some information, there is like a public records source for, but not, it's not a field by field source, right? It's sort of
Right.
like, go ahead. Yeah.
Go on, Paul.
And,
Help us
and
out.
we just had quite a lengthy discussion in the Global Data Exchange session, the roundtable, talking exactly about that with
Yeah.
photos in particular, although it applies to other things as well. But so media, you have decluttering, restaging, and then you go look at it in person, and your initial estimate of, oh, it's just a touch-up paint job, is suddenly like, holy smokes, there's a giant hole in the wall. And it would be nice if, so we were thinking it would go to you guys and then to Data Dictionary, this idea of, we need to know when you've modified things. So we didn't talk about your specific comment, but I did mention remarks as one that, you auto-generated the remarks through a machine learning system. So I'd like to know that, right? And auto pop I hadn't thought of, so that's a good thing to bring up. Excuse me, I seem to need a drink of water.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
But we
So
are-
that's good.
it's
That's
on
an
the list.
interesting thought, right? I mean, field by field sort of source stuff is, yeah, so that's worth some for future discussion. Thank you.
Certainly makes kind of sense more and more as you've got auto pop and computer vision and those things.
I think in a related way, how do you think about like temporal differences? So your mitigated field is interesting to say, hey, it had mold and it was mitigated. That's something that's temporary. Some of these risks may be immutable. If you're on the coast, flood risk is there forever.
Right.
If something materially changes about a dam in town, a flood risk may be new and not fixable.
Yeah.
So like, how do you think about things in time that may change or are fundamental to the property? Like its address is pretty fundamental, though I guess could change.
Yeah.
How would something like either these risks or even, is the number of bedrooms immutable, or what if you add a bedroom? It changes the nature of the home, or you've done significant improvements. And so how quickly does some of the stuff, if you're getting into environmental hazards and their mitigation, go to then almost a list of improvements and their date and the vendor and the source?
And the source, yeah.
Where you're really opening up a large
Yeah.
and valuable set of data.
Sure.
But then, who's going to attest to when this was done and by whom?
Right.
And is that really the focus of the entity, I guess?
Yeah. Yeah, those are great points.
No, that's a really good point, because I mean, as you see, we kind of tried to split this, right? What is affecting the property? What environmentally, like you say, really, it maybe can be mitigated by a levee, but I mean, what is the risk, right, in that property compared to truly in this house, the radon was detected and, there was a system put in to vent that, right? And I mean, you think that, if I was the buyer's agent, I may want that documentation. Who was, when, who was it? Is there maintenance required, right? Yeah, et cetera. Yes. Uh-oh, here's trouble.
Yeah,
Good day, Rob.
exactly. And particular is these lists, I mean, just in general, there's a lot of lists to where the audience for that list is going to be accepting, they're going to know what they're talking about, and they're going to use it. And then there's other lists, because you remember we're fundamentally a marketing engine.
Yeah.
And marketing the property with radon.
You don't think that's a selling point?
And then, so there's sort of that aspect of it. So controlling the audience, I think,
Yeah.
becomes part of the conversation. And then it's, who is it that's putting this in? Somebody walks in and they see a spot on the wall, is that mold? And I think that's part of our challenge, where we can standardize this, but I think we also need to be lucid of who's going to be filling out these forms, what the data source is going to be, and then what the audience is going to be. And I
Yep.
think for stuff like this, having that conversation with groups of predominantly MLSs, but distributors and consumers, about how these are used, how we can rely on the data, and who's going to see it is, I think, pertinent to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially
honestly, I think, if there aren't any MLSs that even have this data in there, why would we even I mean, we're not looking to build this just to give people an idea to start adding this, right? It's really like, we're looking at it, if people have these things, we can standardize them in a way, but if no one's even doing it.
Well, we're not precluded from that.
No,
And
I know.
I could say the green fields have grown by
Yeah, the green fields are definitely.
They've grown by 0.0002% in the last year.
Well, that's amazing. Yeah. So, but anyway.
Right. Thank you.
It means you got about a quarter of a field and you're still kicking the tires, huh, Rob? Yeah. Well, here we can. Yeah.
So poor Greenfield's taking a hit, right, Meg? What that? Ouch.
Yeah. What happens when she changed jobs? She went from the green company, those hippie guys in Portland, out to, the prairie lands or something. I don't know. Tease Meg.
So going to the conversation earlier today, or just a couple minutes ago, about the source of the data.
Yeah.
So my understanding of how that might work throughout the data dictionary would be like for every field that we have, there would be a corresponding list price source, house number source, street number source. This to me seems like it could be a lot of bloat. It could impact, AWS costs and all of that. I guess I'm curious to know more about why knowing that information is important, and maybe there's something about that I'm not understanding. So if you could come up and tell us more about why you want to know that.
And while he's coming up, I mean, the other thing is that even if these things were added to the data dictionary, it doesn't mean your MLS has to implement source fields in your data and all of that, right? It's just simply added in the dictionary so that if you choose to have that, you have a standard way of moving that information along. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I obviously don't think it fits for all fields, but
Yeah.
and we know the agents are, at the end of the day, they're responsible for
Right.
the data.
Right.
But we also know if 86% of a listing is filled out, I don't know that they're going through and validate every single one of them. And I think there is value in knowing, oh, this was AI generated, or oh, this was pulled from county records or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, definitely not for all fields, but I think there's value in just knowing where it's coming from.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know that some MLSs, as they're bringing in data from different sources, do highlight it so the agent can verify that, this was a comp listing that was 5 years ago, but it said we had a concrete foundation. And you would assume that house still has that kind of stuff. Or, like you say, this came from public records. As we're looking to kind of reimagine listing load with AutoPop, and certainly, API calls and anything else to help us. Is it the map layer that told us what school it's in? We just want to highlight that for the agent so they almost click the verify box and they become the owner of that content that gets published. Like you say, just because you can see the refrigerator and washer and dryer doesn't mean it's actually included in the sale. And you hope that, if you're going to bother to give them those hints, that they're cognizant to make sure that they verify that kind of stuff. Yeah, I mean, not to pick on an old saying, but AI still can't smell the cat, right? I mean, regardless of, somebody's got to walk in that house and really, verify what information and condition and those things that stuff is in. But, cool. I mean, the way we're looking at where I work, AI is your assistant. You own it. There's a few guardrails like, you don't put PII in there. So if you're helping somebody put together a rules nice letter that says, Dear Mr. or Miss Agent, your listing had a HUD violation and we removed these two words from the remarks, that, it's really just, Dear Mr. or Mrs. X or something. So, as they're learning to use, unless it's a walled AI system, it's just a helper. They, once that text gets derived, we always tell them, put it in your own voice. You're talking to the customer. It's not, the machine that's doing that. You know, and the other things we're encouraging them, it's really cool to have a conversation with AI, et cetera. So, you know, great tools.
On that topic, I think it's great, looking at it from the standpoint of feeding it, and I hope we don't overreact and shut it down, because the consumer will win.
Oh, yeah.
But like a recent thing that passed into law in California is the association between the enhanced photo and the original photo. I think that would be a cool conversation. Is it going on elsewhere? Is it in the works? And it's going to surface. Do those legal requirements have any kind of alignment that we can standardize the way to do this? And, you know, what can we do that's going to support that experience, that I go look through a carousel and I'm not looking at the enhanced photo and then the junky photo and then the enhanced photo and the junky photo? Or do we have to do that? And then we decide that's okay. I think that would be a good one to cover.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Rob. All right, we got about 2 minutes. You want to go to the last slide here? And these are great. There's the link to submit business cases to R&D online. Want to take a picture of that? I know it's a long URL there, but that way, if you have something and you want us to talk about it, you can drop it in there. And here's our next meeting, December 4th at 2 p.m. We usually do the first Thursday of the month.
Yeah, we normally do the first Thursday of the month, you know, kind of barring holidays, et cetera, conferences, those kinds of things. But we try to be quite consistent. I always tease it, you know, you've got some ideas, you can email them to us, but you know, this gentleman sitting in front, Jason at reso.org, is probably the place where you want to fire those off first, so he can help us kind of make sure our agendas get followed up on and those kinds of things as we move along. You know, as I say, you know, RESO deserves a whole lot of credit.
Yes,
I mean,
100%.
we are volunteers. They do the heavy lifting for us.
Yeah, and just because some of the volunteers get bourbon and some don't, you know. All right. So
I'm going to send a thank you card.
Should we just introduce Interop next, or are you going to? Yeah, all right. So yeah, next is interoperability work group.
Yeah.
Chris Haran. I don't think Catherine's here, but Chris, you can come on out, I guess, unless I'm
thank you all so much.
Thank you.